let's talk about the Karens of the world, right? All of these Karens that are, calling the police officers because people are barbecuing or people are passing by their houses. What do you guys feel about that? What do you think about that? And where do you think that empowerment is really coming from, where they're so boldly now just jumping in and calling? Darrell, you can start first.
Yeah, this is a part of this is a part of a bigger issue that exists in America. Unfortunately, the CEO of the country right now is the one who's driving this type of sentiment and what I call unmitigated privilege. So these particular people are obviously privileged, and they're flexing their privilege. And if you think about it, it's this modern day Emmett Till. And it's very dangerous. And I believe there is a law in New York City. I'm not 100% sure. I didn't look this up. But in regards to, I think it's New York City, Cuomo, with something like the Karen law or whatever they call it, where if you call the police over something that's false or whatever, you can be liable and potentially go to jail for it. So it's just a bigger situation that we need to ensure that we vote this out and reject it 100% in November 3rd or 4th. I don't forget the date, but election day. We need to vote this out 100% and reject this, because this systemic racism in America needs to be eradicated, kicked out, so we can move forward. And it's not going to happen until we do our parts and essentially vote on all levels of government to make the changes that we need, that is appropriate in the light of our community.
That was a great response. Would anyone else like to add anything?
It speaks to the fact that we are being killed on camera and it being publicized and it being of the, dare I say, norm, that it's okay for Karen to pull out a gun and wave it at a teenager and her mom, right? That it's okay. I think it speaks to, it also speaks to the fact of not only the systemic racism, but also the white privilege. Because if you kind of switch that a little bit, a Black man could never, or not a Black woman, if we're gonna say Karen, Tamika could never, Tanisha could never, you feel me? So it's one of those things where it does speak to the bigger issue, and it's quite sickening, terrible. And it's to a point where, well, I'm my side of the Bronx, I don't really see too much Karens, but I gotta be nervous with the Beckys now. I don't know. It's just
you are so right, Omar and Darrell, because take gentrification for example. Before this whole COVID thing started, I was with a buddy. We were hanging out at this place up in Harlem. I think it's called the Red Rooster, and it was going really well. We walked out of the place about 2 a.m. in the morning, and right there on 7th Avenue was a white woman walking her dog at 2 a.m. in the morning. Now, for a little cultural context, there was a time when that would be inconceivable. But as the gentrification comes along, you find what happened. You find people like the Karens moving uptown. And what happened? One of them, the guys were drumming in Central Park down there by 110th Street, something that goes on in Harlem almost forever. And she didn't like the drumming. So she called the police to say she don't know what all the noise across the park was about. And she took the time to just did a little research or ask questions. She would have realized that would have been considered a norm in a community like 110th Street, which was Harlem, which is not anymore. So yes, the Karens are moving uptown, and we're likely to see more situation. And then the fuel to the fire is Darrell talked about, the CEO that is up there who sets the tone, and he has set the moral tone about knocking these son of a bitches out. Or so yes, people feel, and there are, in fact, there's one hate group online, I forgot their name, and they said this is a message to BLM. The minute President Trump gives the okay to shoot protesters, they literally put this out on Facebook, we will be there up in front row to start the shooting. So yes, the CEO is setting the tone, And those people now, who the overprivileged ones, just feel empowered and just say, this is the right way to do. What they don't know is that is a powder keg that is going to blow. And if this blow, I can tell you this, when it's end, this nation is going to look completely different. So we do not want to go down that road. I hope we avoid that and we can put these things back in the bottle and move in a different direction.
The good news about this whole situation right now is that white and black, young and old alike are protesting against this and refuting this. So this is the first time in American history we actually see so many groups of people trying to refute this particular type of behavior and this mindset of racism. So this is the reason why we're getting so much reform and getting things done. So I'm really happy about that. And if you look at sports, a lot of people are acknowledging the Black Lives Movement. You look on every single platform of a company now, they're acknowledging the BLM. Why? Because we hold more power than we know. We hold the money. We spend. So we have the power. So in situations like this, economics. So the thing is, they acknowledge it, and that's a good thing. And that is what's going to push this whole thing forward and, help us overcome our plight.
Yes, finally, sports and everything else is starting to support the movement. Again, it took another brother to die in the streets for that acknowledgement to happen. And I know we're getting a little bit off topic, but people who are now supporting taking the knee and everything also told LeBron James to shut up and dribble, as if his opinion and his platform didn't matter. And Colin Kaepernick was dragged through the mud for preaching the exact same thing. So I don't know where the change happened, but I do know that it took a brother to die in the street for us to see this taking place now. How sincere it is, I don't know. But again, I'm assuming that we're at least appreciating some of the sentiment. But it shouldn't have had to get to this point for that to happen.
And another thing, these alleged Karens, right? They're actually being held responsible right now. Look at this. They are doing these racist behavior and bias movements and stuff like that, and they're getting fired. People are looking people up who have this particular racist, mindset and doing these negative things towards our community, and they're getting fired from their job. This has never happened before. Social media is a powerful thing in this sense, and in terms of we said the Karens, in terms of the Donalds of the world, we have an obligation to make sure that he's fired.
Hey guys, in terms of the Karens, they've been doing what they've been doing for forever, man. It's not new. We just started videoing it. That's just the difference. They've been doing what they've been doing, man. And in terms of the movement, the Black Lives Matter movement, guys, remember there was a time when Martin Luther King was the most dangerous man in America. Remember that? And remember, there's a time when Muhammad Ali was a communist, and they called him every name in the book. And then, 30, 50 years later, he's an hero. So it's funny how history repeats itself, eh? Thanks, guys.
We're trying to make sure that it really doesn't continue to repeat itself. Change needs to happen and not in a repetitive kind of way. Omar, would you like to add anything to that?
To piggyback off that too, like the Karens have been alive. I mean, it goes back to 1989 with the Central Park Five, right? So it's dated, right? I'd like to think that this year would succumb to us just realizing that racism was never a thing that went away. It was just something that was just well hidden. And the fact that things are coming to face value now, I take it as this, honestly. It's America taking a good look in the mirror, because the foundation of America is ugly, right? If you take it back to which I love, the Broadway show Hamilton, right? You take it back to that, the fact that it took like a multicultural cast to bring forth such hidden truth, and also to like undermine what was on fact. Like George Washington, pretty much everybody within that, presentation dealt with slavery. Slavery was the basis of our economy, right? And it's just one of those things where America is just having the truth in its face, and it's up to us to change it at this point. So Karen is just the auntie of the party that everybody forgot.
They ain't
Omar,
forget about her.
I think with all of the Karens out there, just keep in mind that yes, it is a great thing that they're being exposed and that it's being videotaped and videotaped from the very beginning. But I think we also still need to be vigilant and keep, being united in the fact that there is somebody out there that wants to be these white knights for these Karens. So we need to, again, be safe and watch each other's backs out there and continue to videotape all of these interactions, whether it be with Karens or with law enforcement.
But I also want to push to avoid, because I did mention the point where Karen pulled out a gun outside of a Chipotle. It was later developed that they were actually the agitators, right? So we also need to be smarter and avoid situations that can cause a hashtag, if you understand what I'm saying. So we also have to be vigilant in our approach and how we avoid situations that could not be so beneficial to us in the long run. So I think it's also a point we need to also hold ourselves accountable in that regard.
Yes, finally, sports and everything else is starting to support the movement. Again, it took another brother to die in the streets for that acknowledgement to happen. And I know we're getting a little bit off topic, but people who are now supporting taking the knee and everything also told LeBron James to shut up and dribble, as if his opinion and his platform didn't matter. And Colin Kaepernick was dragged through the mud for preaching the exact same thing. So I don't know where the change happened, but I do know that it took a brother to die in the street for us to see this taking place now. How sincere it is, I don't know. But again, I'm assuming that we're at least appreciating some of the sentiment, but it shouldn't have had to get to this point for that to happen.
And another thing, these alleged Karens, right? They're actually being held responsible right now. Look at this. They are doing these racist behavior and bias movements and stuff like that, and they're getting fired. People are looking people up who have this particular racist, mindset and doing these negative things towards our community, and they're getting fired from their job. This has never happened before. Social media is a powerful thing in this sense, and in terms of we said the Karens, in terms of the Donalds of the world, we have an obligation to make sure that he's fired.
Hey guys, in terms of the Karens, they've been doing what they've been doing for forever, man. It's not new. We just started videoing it. That's just the difference. They've been doing what they've been doing, man. And in terms of the movement, the Black Lives Matter movement, guys, remember there was a time when Martin Luther King was the most dangerous man in America. Remember that? And remember there's a time when Muhammad Ali was a communist and they called him every name in the book. And then, 30, 50 years later, he's an hero. So it's funny how history repeats itself, eh? Thanks, guys.
We're trying to make sure that it really doesn't continue to repeat itself. Change needs to happen and not in a repetitive kind of way. Omar, would you like to add anything to that?
Yeah, to piggyback off that too, like the Karens have been alive. I mean, it goes back to 1989 with the Central Park Five, right? So it's dated, right? I'd like to think that this year would succumb to us just realizing that racism was never a thing that went away. It was just something that was just well hidden. And the fact that things are coming to face value now, I take it as this, honestly. It's America taking a good look in the mirror, because the foundation of America is ugly, right? If you take it back to which I love the Broadway show Hamilton, right? You take it back to that, the fact that it took like a multicultural cast to bring forth such hidden truth, and also to like undermine what was on fact, like George Washington, pretty much everybody within that, you know, presentation dealt with slavery. Slavery was the basis of our economy, right? And it's just one of those things where America is just having the truth in its face, and it's up to us to change it at this point. So Karen is just the auntie of the party that everybody forgot.
They ain't
Omar,
forget about her.
I think with all of the Karens out there, just keep in mind that yes, it is a great thing that they're being exposed and that it's being videotaped and videotaped from the very beginning. But I think we also still need to be vigilant and keep, you know, being united in the fact that there is somebody out there that wants to be these white knights for these Karens. So we need to, again, be safe and watch each other's backs out there and continue to videotape all of these interactions, whether it be with Karens or with law enforcement.
But I also want to push to like avoid, because I did mention the point where Karen pulled out a gun outside of a Chipotle. It was later developed that they were actually the agitators, right? So we also need to be smarter and avoid situations that can cause a hashtag, if you understand what I'm saying. So we also have to be vigilant in our approach and how we avoid situations that could not be so beneficial to us in the long run. So I think it's also a point we need to also hold ourselves accountable in that regard.
I thank you guys all for coming on, and you guys have brought up very, very excellent points on what you feel needs to be changed in regards to police reform and in the Black community. So I would like to know specifically all the changes that you've proposed, whether it's community building, whether it's funding in different places, building up mental health. How would you measure these? How would these changes be measurable? What would the outcomes look like in the community that you are proposing for these changes to be made? What would that look like for you? Let's begin with Michael with that question. How could we measure these changes that we are ourselves proposing?
I think there are a lot of parameters that we can use to measure them. When we start making changes in the community, first of all, we have to safeguard expecting everything is going to be fine in 2 months. We have to be more realistic and realize that it's a process. So when we start to see delinquency starts to go down, when the police numbers start to show that teen arrests or disturbance in the neighborhood, when those things start to indicate a trend downwards, we start to realize when escalation between members of the Black community start to become rare and in between, we start to realize when we stop seeing kids being in large numbers just seem to have nowhere to go, when those numbers start dwindling, we realize something is happening, because those kids are going to be kids and they have to be somewhere. Once we start to channel their energy into productive areas and arenas, show them possibilities where they can engage in, because there are people who are willing to say, yeah, I will volunteer my time. So when we start looking at the numbers and see a positive trend as arrests going down, delinquency going down and stuff like that, then I think we can accept that as an indication that we just start to move in the right direction. Thanks.
People need purpose. People needs purpose. Without purpose, people gonna fall through the cracks, and that's one of the things we need to work on. And to, as Mike said, it won't be overnight. It's gonna take a process. It's gonna be a process. It's gonna take a little time to get it going. For one, we have to. We should notice the changes in behavior in the community in terms of the young people, especially. You know, what they're doing different, what they're not doing, what they're not interested in doing anymore, stuff like that. Whatever it takes, we just got to sit down and, you know, talk about it, have dialogue, and see what, you know, we could come up with. But definitely, people needs purpose, and that's what we need to put back in the community, purpose. Thanks.
Thank you. Lieutenant Charles?
I think long-term, you know, when we start to see high school graduation numbers for the Black and brown community go up, when we see graduation entry numbers go up for the Black and brown community, when we see graduation from colleges, when we see the numbers in terms of employment rates for the Black community, when we see equal wages for people of color, and when we see percentage numbers of people incarcerated, when those percentages start to go down, that will be our proof that the things that we are working now has worked, has at least had some sort of impact on the numbers of our children, young children now, several years from now, where they are and what those numbers look like. I think that will show, that what we're talking about, if it was actually put into practice.
For me, the measurement will be through time. T-I-M-E, time. So we're talking about right now, like we said, New York City just 2 weeks ago passed police reform. So we have to give it some time to see how, this situation with the police and the reallocation of funds for certain causes and programs is going to impact the community in that sense. So it's going to take a little bit of time. And then, of course, on the national level, which I think by 2021, there will be a national police reform across all 50 states. And that, I think we'll start to see the numbers go down in terms of unlawful deaths or whatever have you, and stuff like that. So from a community standpoint, I would say that we have to put the right people in power in our areas, in our community, to ensure that we get the best situation for our community. And as we all mentioned, it's economic, it's school, it's the police. It's a combination of a lot of factors that go in together, and then intricate pieces that are bridged together to make the community whole. So, like I said, it's policing, it's economics, it's education, it's us voting, because we don't do enough voting to put the right people in place to actually push our agenda forward. So that's how it is. That's how it's going to be measured for me.
I'm thinking when we, excuse me, as Black people, as a community, we no longer feel it's us against them. I think that will be the end product. I feel when the anxiety within the African American community goes down when they see, NYPD roll through. I think also another missing piece, I'm not sure if anybody's mentioned. I know when I was in school, there was I feel like it was a partnership. There was the dude, the 1-800 Crime Stoppers. There was the McGruff dude. I feel like there was such a partnership with NYPD, or excuse me, the police and education. You almost kind of felt like they were there. They were the community. They were part of the community. And I think that slowly dwindled. I mean, as we've gotten older, I just remember that. I think if we find a way to incorporate police within the educational system, because they are there and they are a staple, I think that will help, because it's also about making sure our future is safe. If they don't feel safe, we have a problem. And if I need to be the beacon on that, I'll die on that hill, because we need to make sure that our future is secure in all capacities, not just, financially, generational wealth, mentally, because there's no dollar that you can put on mental health, especially within our Black community. So I think it should start, well, that would be my utopian of a perfect community with the police. Justice for Breonna Taylor.
Thank you. And on that note, I actually wanted to ask Lieutenant Charles that question. What do you feel about what happened to Breonna Taylor and where we stand today in regards to the injustice of it?
That's a great question.
So, yes, that is a great question. The way I feel about it is, any persons who is killed unlawfully, any person that is killed unlawfully, that person, that perpetrator, the person who took that person's life, should be arrested and charged, period. So there should have already been an arrest made, in my opinion. It's you know, it leaves a sour taste in my mouth sometimes. Because listen, I work with a lot of great cops. I work with a lot of good guys. But to know that I am a part of a systemic issue is very unsettling for me to be a part of that. Now I can try all I want to be that small change, and I am, and I'm going to do that every single day of my career as long as I have air in my lungs. And I'm going to try to bring those along who I work with along with me. So, and hopefully they would bring their colleagues with them. But it's a hard pill to swallow. It's hard to say, hey, listen, I want everybody to go home safe at the end of the day, knowing that there are people in the streets, and not necessarily my officers, but again, a part of that system that I work for. People are part of that system, taking the lives of people who don't get to go home at the end of the day. People who are killed in their own homes at this point, to where you're not even your home is safe. You know, I mean, for me, that's where I want to end up every night. You know, and to be in that location and to have somebody come in that's not supposed to be there, when you have every right not only to be there, but have worked your butt off all of your life to be at that location, your safe space, and then to have your life stolen from you at that location. You know, there's no excuse for it. You know, whatever biases that officer took to the call, whatever fears that officer took to the call, no matter how you look at it, his response was inappropriate and it was unlawful, and he should have been arrested. Period.
Let me just say to the lieutenant, I'm really glad you brought him in, because you know, we have a perspective, and as he said earlier, not just as a police officer, but as a black man on the police force. And you bring a unique perspective which was needed in this conversation. So I just wanted to say thank you for being part of this conversation.
Real quick though, just to bring up, as far as that not kick down the door, they actually, if I'm not mistaken, they changed that whole rule or whatever. Before that was like you can do that without any consequence, but now you're no longer allowed to do that, whether you are law enforcement.
That's correct. That's been amended, so you can no longer exercise knock warrants.
Yeah, no knock warrants. Like, you can't do that, which is insane.
And this whole thing plays to the broader aspect of why we need reform across all 50 states to ban, you know, a lot of these situations from ever happening again, like chokeholds, knees on necks, and you know, unlawful arrest and brutality and breaking down doors and stuff like that. So it'll just be interesting to see what's going to come out of this situation. I think sometime next year for the U.S. as a whole, so we can put this behind us and start moving it forward to do better, you know? And you know, that's what I look forward to at the end, just to see how this all comes together, just to make things better. And that's why I mentioned earlier in this conversation about rebranding and reforming the police in the light of their community. So it could come in all different forms, because every community is not the same. So it'll be tailored to each community based on what the community wants. That's my vision of the situation.
I just want to just say one more thing. And I'd be remiss if I didn't say this, even with this whole Breonna Taylor thing, and it touches me because I think of all of the women that are in my family, all of the women that are not within my family that I care and love. We have to protect our Black women. We have to protect the integrity of the Black woman. And I don't want to be misconstrued or anything. I mean, George Floyd, you know, Ahmaud Arbery, I get it. But Sandra Bland, you got countless others who there were women within, I believe last year, they were just missing. We didn't get a word. I just think we just gotta, this is why I'm so passionate about Black Lives Mattering before anything else. We have to matter. But it also starts with our Black women. And I think it's just an atrocity that nothing has been done with this case as of yet. These 3 men are taking pictures on vacation. And if that's not part of what Darrell was saying, I don't know what is, as far as systemic racism, the bigger issue. So I just think within that, the crevice of that bigger issue is the integrity, protecting the integrity and the lives and the legacy of our Black women. That's it.
Thank you so much. Would anyone else like to point anything out, add anything?
I agree 100%.
I agree 100% as well.
Awesome.
And I want to say thank you to you guys for having me on this panel with you. You know, when I was first asked, I wasn't apprehensive at all about it. I like to speak with members of the community. I like to hear the community's, aspect of the community. And if more forums like this took place, then maybe that'll be one less innocent person, Black person who's killed by a law enforcement officer. If somebody can take out the time to sit down and listen, and put their egos aside, and not stand behind that thin blue line, but stand behind a people and a movement and a culture, and we'd all be so much better for it. And I just appreciate each and every one of you guys right now for changing me with your aspects and your thoughts, and I'd love to join again if you guys ever do this again. I really appreciated it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for your time too, officer. We appreciate it. And this goes to what he's saying. It's a bigger thing. We need to have town halls. We need to have like those type of community engagements where officers are actually sitting with the residents and figuring out what's their troubles and what's the situations that's affecting the community. So that way they can actually show that they're interested in being engaged into making appropriate changes that can push the communities forward, not only make it safe, but to also bridge the gap of all the negative things that both sides think about, in continuity to make everything better. And that's, like I said, it's going to take so much time, but it has to start somewhere. And something like this, the way we're talking right now, that's how it can begin.
Thank you guys all so much. I appreciate all of you for coming on. We discussed some very, very important things, and we set the tone for change that needs to happen. And I really hope that you all go out into the world and be each other's keeper, be your brother's keeper, be your sister's keeper, and be the necessary change, because that change begins with you. You have to be the change that you want to see in the world. And I hope that you infect each other with this change and you go out and it becomes contagious across the world. You guys have presented a lot of important things here. And that is the one that stuck out to me the most, was about the change starting with you and being a brother's keeper. So I really respect and thank all of you for coming on. I appreciate and love all of you. And I thank you for uplifting us up as Black women. And I just want to say thank you guys for coming on. Lieutenant Charles, I appreciate you for coming on again, and we will have you back on again. Thank you so much. That being said, you guys have a great night.